Good morning everyone, and a very happy new year to you all. While we're having to be careful still, there seems to be much light at the end of the tunnel now, and I'm sure we're in for a much better year ahead. I hope you all had a very good Christmas and all stayed safe and well. And now we're back to 2021 and painting again. So this month and this week I'm going to concentrate on landscapes, and I'm starting off by demonstrating a snow scene. This follows on nicely from where we left off painting a white still life last time, and in many ways painting snow is very similar to the way we were leaving white paper showing, you know, the lights and the whites of what we had to create last time. But with a snow scene, not leaving quite as much as you may think, as you'll see. So these are the colours that I've used, and keeping a fairly limited palette. But because I'm actually going to paint a snow scene with a sunset, it's going to have a little bit more colour than maybe some other snow scenes might have. But this is going to show you that you can actually put quite a lot of colour in, but it's still going to be a snow scene and enabling us to leave white paper. Okay. I actually like leaving white paper in all of my paintings, but that's an optional thing really. So the brushes that I'm going to use today will be a nice soft brush, fat brush for the sky, and I've got trees to cope with, so I'm going to use a flat brush and possibly a smaller round brush. And for twigs in the trees and grasses and so on, I'm going to use the sword brush. First of all, I'm going to wet the page, and I'm actually going to wet all of it because I want to show you that you can actually bring the colour down into the area at the bottom that has the snow, because snow really isn't white. I will perhaps be leaving some areas of white, but when you look closely you'll see that there is a lot of shadow and various reflective colours in snow. So good old wetting of the paper, and then loading the brush. I have my colours here, but I've not mixed it all in case I want to vary the tones. But bear in mind that you're actually going to, once you've applied your colour, it's actually going to dry up 3 times lighter. So make sure you have enough, because mixed up, because really we don't want to have to stop halfway through, because touching the sky is not a particularly good idea. And I'm bringing it right down, not to touch the sky too much, and especially once it starts to dry. But there are other colours to contend with here in this scene that I've got in front of me. So where that's meeting up with the white, the blue paper, painted area of blue paper, it's creating a nice colour. Lots of yellow here, reflected from the sun into the sky. So I'm actually going to bring a little bit of that down into the snow. And maybe a little bit of the pink into the snow as well. Have a little area of brightness there. So I've lost my drawing more or less, but I'm actually just going to bring back by lifting a little bit where the trees are. It doesn't matter that they've got colour on them, but I'm going to take some away by just lifting. Okay, so you can do all of this kind of thing, obviously, while it's still wet. And that's going to help when I want to paint my silver birch trees. Taking a little bit of the colour away here and there, but I will be putting more back in at some point. I will have to stop and start because this is obviously quite a big thing to paint, and it's going to take me time. So I'm going to have to stop right now to allow this to dry before I go any further in with the colour. But just before I stop, I'm actually going to bring a little bit of the blue across into the sky. And while it's still wet, you have about 3 minutes, I reckon, something like that. If it's totally wet, you have about 3 minutes before it starts to really dry up. And if I were to do this when it's dry, I would get hard edged marks, which is totally not the thing I want. There isn't any actual real light apart from there, so I just lifted a bit off there, but it's going to close in again a little bit and soften. So I think that's all I need to do with that sky right now. So touching it as little as possible, but I'm going to just stop now, dry this off or allow it to dry, and then carry on. I forgot to mention that I actually taped the edge of my pad and tucked the tape underneath to just give it a little bit. It is a blocked pad, but I just did that to give it a little bit extra stiffness, so that when I take it off I will actually have a nice border, but at the same time it's stopping it from crinkling too much. I have actually dried this with the hairdryer, but I would suggest that you allow it to dry naturally. And I'm hoping that that area where my horizon line is still slightly damp. I tried to keep it so. It's going to be fairly level there, but while that's still damp, it's a nice time to actually drop in the very distant trees that are sitting there, because it's going to blend nicely. So it'll be fairly flat, fairly dark, and not that significant. No detail, but I will go back and put some depth in, just at the very horizon. So it's giving some perspective in that. At the same time, it's not anything really very detailed to worry about there. It's a really very distant bank of trees as far as I can see. I may go back and put a bit more depth in there after, but what there is, while that's still damp, is just a little bit of red. Where the sun is sitting behind the foliage. Right, now best not to touch that anymore. Now, I haven't masked anything at all. You can actually, and I'll show you later, one that I did earlier with masking, but I haven't actually masked anything. So I've got lots of light in my trees, and there is some snow also on my trees, so I'm just going to have to try and indicate that without the use of masking fluid. I wanted to just keep it quite simple, really. So I have a tree here. I'll just show you the trees again. So this is what I'm dealing with now, the little trees at the side. Okay, trying not to put my arm on the work that I've just done there. So I'm using a flat brush just to indicate the edge of this particular tree, leaving some light for both snow and the fact that they are silver birch. Two colours going on. I've got sepia and Payne's grey. So twisting my brush to get varying shapes here. There's also some ultramarine blue going on in this tree, which was nice, keeping it together. So it's nice to have a limited palette that you can keep together. Try for the next tree. And when I start to put the branches and the twigs and things behind these trees, the side that I've left, this side, the light side, will actually start to show up without my having to put very much work in. This tree is going off behind and it isn't really quite so significant. But they do have some darker areas within them. So while it's still slightly damp, going back and just bringing a little bit of that across. Trying not to touch too much. Allowing areas to dry before I judge. Okay. More depth into this one here at the bottom. It's quite dark just there. Right, now this is the most important tree because it's in the front and it's larger. So I've got to make sure that that's a focal point. So giving it much more importance. There's always got to be an area in your pictures that have a little bit more of everything really. Detail, colour, position. So this is the star of the show. Some really dark markings in this tree that's in the front. Good. It has branches coming from here. Normally when we paint trees, I suggest that we start at the bottom and work up at painting it the way it grows. Certainly I did the drawing that way. That way you position it in a good way and you have it where you need it to be on the page. But because I didn't want to work over myself, I've painted it from bottom to top. Top to bottom, I mean, sorry. Just a tiny tree here, dark, behind. Doesn't have a lot of light in that one. So it's starting to take shape. I'm going to stop and for the moment and carry on again in a second. I've just painted in the scrub behind the trees here so that you can actually now start to see the shapes of the trees. It just got very dark behind the trees here, which is helpful insofar as it will now show my trees up and take the distant foliage back and bring my trees forward. I've also got some nice clean water now. This I've slightly dampened, but it's got a bit dry again. I want this to be slightly damp because there are some nice fir trees here, but very dark and again quite distant. So just indicating the shapes. of some fir trees. Not being detailed at this point. And they come down a little bit further forward than the horizon line. Try not to make them all the same level, height, and leaving some light coming through a little bit for snowy areas or light popping through, whatever. And I will put more detail, slight detail into those when it's all a bit drier. But it's meeting up. It sort of goes around and meets up with these more distant trees here. I'll put some depth in at the bottom here. Taking some of the other side of that branch so that it doesn't just suddenly stop being one thing and then turning into something else. That doesn't look very realistic. Okay, so they're very, very distant and very soft. And a few here that also look a little bit more significant than these that just trail away to just dark patches. Right, good. I may just take one through here. Don't always paint exactly what you see. Sometimes it's better. So I've had a half an hour. So better get going. Don't always paint exactly what you see. If you think something's going to enhance your picture by doing it, putting something else in, then definitely go for that. Okay, so good. Now I can carry on a little bit more with the branches, and then I'll have to stop again because there are lots of branches and I want to get them all in. I have created some here, but there are lots of branches that I want to put in. So I'll stop and get that done before I start on the snow at the bottom here. So keep these colours going with the sepia and the Payne's grey, I think. And obviously I'm not copying exactly what I see in these branches. I'm just keeping an eye on things, and at the same time as just creating my own branches, because to copy them exactly would take ages and it just isn't necessary. But you do have to take time over these because they are important, and it's a good idea to try and get them looking as natural as you possibly can, because if not, it just will ruin the whole picture, really. But this is going to give lovely balance to the picture, which has not got so much going on this side. But bringing these branches down is going to really make a difference. So use the tip of your brush. Let them overlap. Okay, stopping again to do some more and then coming back. I've painted a few more branches in, and I could put lots more in, but I haven't the time, and so I'm not going to do that now, but I could do some later. But you if you do something like this, can put as many branches in as you wish. I've actually mixed up some raw umber and raw sienna in a watery mix, just to add a little bit of colour going on and creating some dead leaves, which is going to fill in the gaps nicely and give those branches something to sit on those branches. And so I've changed to my little sword brush and just creating some nice little leaves that you see sitting on the trees at this time of the year and in the winter. Dropping water back on will actually make them look more realistic and not too detailed, which isn't really what we want. Little tiny touches of some deeper colours would look nice also, because just indicates little twigs and little dead leaves and things. So you can carry on doing that for as long as you feel you can bear it, because it does get it's quite a big job and it's quite tedious. So it's a good idea sometimes to leave that and then go back to it later when you're touching up. I'm actually going to put a few little branches coming in from the top, just to keep the eye down into the page, and it's part of the same tree. And it just adds a little bit of interest in that corner. So this sword brush actually does create nice, fine branches for you. Right. Now I think I need to come down into the snow. Okay, what do we see? Let me show you. We have bumps and lumps and crevices in the snow, and we have grasses and a little bit more sort of brush there. But there's a patch of something very much in the distance here, no idea what it is, but just popping that in will give some nice interest there and break up the monotony. A little bit further back there. This is helping also to create distance. And a stronger area of a similar sort of thing going on here. Little bushes and things, I guess. But I'm going to try and keep a lead in towards the distance. A little bit more depth one side perhaps. Not so sure about that one. Right. So now we need to show the nice shadows in the snow. So there's lots going on around the tree, so I'll work this way. And we do see lots of shadows in the snow. So the softening edge technique works amazingly well for this. And there's lots of blue in this area of snow here. And it piles up underneath the trees when the wind has taken it. So I'm using the sky colour, the ultramarine blue. Dry brush work works really well. I'm also putting a little bit of Payne's grey in there. So now the snow is piling up around the trees and creating shapes in the snow. So to create the dry brushwork, you need to make sure that your brush is flat. And then you get the crunchy snow appearing as well. It's quite dark off behind here. And that again is helping to show up the edges of the light side of my trees. Some depth in that tree just there. So it's nice to actually pop that in. It's going to make the snow look lighter. And take that depth off away behind there. So don't be afraid to put the darks in. The darks are amazing. They always look good. Darks here. Okay, so that's helped to bring out the edges of my snow. So softening the edge, leaving the little crusty area that appeared there, which is nice. You don't always know what is going to happen, but if something good happens, leave it. Not seeing too much going on in the distance here. Quite a smooth looking patch, but there's quite a clump here of raised snow where the wind has brought it and made that kind of a mark here. I like the pinky area here that happened when we put the sky down. I think that's about it really for the snow. But you can see that there isn't very much white paper left at all, It's got some colour in it on this particular snow scene anyway. Just going to put some darks here. So the darks are really going to help show up the light in the snow. So that's actually just putting a little bit of insignificant detail in. More little trees in the front or something. But that's helping to create some depth and distance there. But while I've got this brush going on, we'll put some of these grasses in that are sitting behind the raised areas of snow. It's quite pretty. It's blended in to the damp area that I had there with the snow, so that's looking pretty. If things like that happen, just leave it. So that's one little patch of twigs and branches and things. And they do seem to be sitting behind these areas that have blown into a sort of raised patch of snow. And there's quite a lot going on here. So this is actually going to create balance from the side where the trees are to balance out all the work that's gone over the other side. Make sure you keep it behind the clump of snow. I'll attach this photograph so that if you wanted to paint this particular scene, you can, or choose your own. If you don't have, I'm hoping it's going to snow fairly soon, so I can take some more photographs. I'm fed up with all my local photographs that I took last time we had snow. So I actually got this one from Pixabay. So that's another option. You can look on Pixabay and find something. So to take that up higher there is going to send everything else back a bit. So I think that's enough work in that. But that's, I think, more or less it. I definitely would like more work in the tree and to create more twigs and things, but I really haven't got the time. But what I do want to show you is I haven't used masking fluid, but if there are any actual areas of light, nice clean water and snowy areas that you would like to bring back, you can use a gouache. This is the only time I use white paint. We don't use white paint to create white areas, generally speaking. We just leave white paper. But where you have a situation like this, where you've maybe covered up some areas that you might have liked to leave a little bit snowy, it's a water-based paint and quite helpful to actually use to bring some light areas back where you perhaps might need them, or pop a little bit of snow sitting on the top of branches and things. So you can see how it's working quite well. Definitely helping to create the snow sitting on the branches and things, and I much prefer that, really. I don't know, there are two schools of thought with using masking fluid. Just don't overdo the masking fluid if you use it. That's the biggest tip, I think. But, you know, this is nice to just see what you've got at the end and bring back anything that you need. The other thing you can do is, where you've got this clump of trees here, you might want to just, a little bit more water on the brush, you might want to just tap in a little bit of snow sitting on the trees, which will soften that up nicely and make it look quite realistic. And if that's looking a bit contrived, just touch lightly with the water. I would actually put a few more grasses and things going on through there as well, but I'll actually attach this, obviously, and when the tape comes off, it's going to look better as well. But I am going to put a little bit more work into the trees and things. So that's that. Here's one I did earlier, which has got a lot more colour in it, and that's why I wanted to show you. Lots and lots of colour and very little white paper left, but it's still a snow scene, and it's still looking white and light in the areas that it needs to. So that's that. This is one I painted using the masking fluid, and as you can see, I've popped it on the trees and things before I actually started to paint. That would be done after the drawing stage. So, you know, that's an option, and it does work. But because there was so much in the way of branches, trees and what have you, I felt I needed a bit of help with keeping the lights and the white paper going. Think about shadows a lot. We've worked on shadows, so create nice shadows in your snow scene. And the reason I want to show you this one is because where you've got lumps and bumps and a tree that's maybe sitting, I made this one up just to show you that your shadows need to follow the same shapes as the snow might have created. So where there's a dip here, your shadow has got to go down and in. I also use some sparkly paint on there to make it look icy. Use your charcoal or your pens to create a monochrome to help you to see the lights and darks if you really want to work on something and get it right. And then you can go in with the colour that you need, okay? So don't forget, you can use your charcoal for preliminary sketches and all the things that we did before. You don't always, you may not have a snow scene, but you may have a favourite scene or a building or something. And this was taken, this photograph, at Walberswick. It's a little boathouse, and I really love it. And so I turned that into a snow scene. So you can take something that you particularly like, a landscape picture, and it's another little challenge to then turn it into a snow scene, which is again what I did here with this one, my favourite tree. It's up north, and I look at this tree every time I go there and take a photograph, and this time I turned it into a snow scene. So we don't seem to get so much snow as we used to, do we? So that's it for this week. Next week I'm going to try to put a little bit of life into a landscape, a snow scene or a different sort of landscape, I'm not sure which yet, but trying to encourage you to maybe put a little bit of life into your pictures, which always, you know, just gives that extra little bit of something if there's something that maybe has movement in a picture. Okay, so have a good week, and I hope to see a nice snow scene from you all. Take care. Bye-bye.